Farming before the 18th century was an entire village affair. Land was not farmed by a singular person, instead it was farmed by multiple people in a communal sharing system in order to provide a stable food source. This way of farming stagnated improvements of agricultural technology and favored the poorer farmers who relied on the shared crops due to them not having their own. Villagers would come together to decide which crops were to be planted, while fields not in use were kept for the grazing of different animals within the community. This all changed when enclosures began to be introduced. Soon enough, larger noble landowners began seeing the purchase of different fields to be a great way for them to make more money. These fields were then surrounded by some type of fencing, closing them off from livestock and other farmers who had previously helped tend the land. Those who owned the new enclosures would lease them out to other farmers in a sharecropping system, which meant taking money and crops created on the fields. Those who tended the land lived there and kept some of the crops for themselves. The new taxes small farmers paid and their reliance on the nobility greatly altered the farming system. The nobility, having great influence in the parliament, passed the Enclosure Acts, ensuring that they had legal rights to enclose land. These new acts strained the relationship between the people and the government, as they were greatly favoring the landowners who were changing their entire way of life.
The real agricultural revolution started as landowners began to search for new innovations to increase crop production and revamp soil that had been greatly depleted by overuse. The need for more production was thanks to the rise of population. With more people, the cost of grain was increasing, putting more pressure on the poor. Some began to search for new ways to increase production instead of purely maintaining production at a steady pace. The potato and maize are clear examples of crops that were slowly being introduced to mass production in Europe. New World colonies began to send back these new crops which were high in nutrition and were perfect for mass production. Slowly, in places such as Ireland, the potato took over as the main crop, as not only was it in demand, but it also could sustain a single family for an entire year if enough were produced, as farmers could plant many in small areas of land. Charles Townshend, nicknamed the turnip, found new ways of using fertilizers to cultivate sandy soil in order to grow crops on formerly unusable land. He also was the first to introduce field rotation, where if a farmer has 3 fields, he would rest one while the other 2 grew crops in order to let the nutrients in the unused soil be reformed, making it fertile again.
His counterpart, Jethro Tull, funded others' experiments and also created his own. Some of his new experiments did not prove to be viable. However, some proved worthwhile, including the use of iron plows, which would dig deeper into the soil, cultivating it for longer periods of time. He also began drilling seeds of wheat instead of just casting the seeds, giving them more of a chance to grow. Robert Bakewell was another influential figure in the revolution. He created new ways of breeding animals in order to increase the amount of livestock and bump up the quantity of meat and milk for villagers. These animals were then used for help in production of crops, helping with plowing and planting by pulling on the machines now used for farming. The newly bred animals were genetically stronger than those previously produced. With the addition of new technological advancements, human labor was not needed as much for the increase in production. The loss of land and the rise in prices forced many farmers to search for more stable jobs in cities to provide support for their families. They began to find work as shoemakers or in factories that began popping up due to the Industrial Revolution.